You guess what can kill a town in California faster than a natural disaster? It's not what you think. If you love road trips or you're curious about the cracks behind the California dream, this video is for you. In this video, I'll take you through 10 of the most notable abandoned cities and towns in California so you can see the moment a once crowded place turns into silence. Because many towns didn't collapse from one massive catastrophe, but from something far colder, being quietly crossed off the map by the economy and transportation routes. Try to guess this. Among the 10 names coming up, which place will surprise you the most for the reason it disappeared? Number 10. Old Shasta. In Northern California, not far from the roads that now funnel life toward bigger towns, Old Shasta feels like a place that decided to whisper instead of shout. It is not a full vanishing act. It is more like a town that stepped back from the stage and let time lower the lights. You can still sense the bones of a community that once mattered, brick by brick, storefront by storefront, the kind of main street that used to be a promise. The quiet here is not empty. It is thoughtful. It is the calm you feel when a river has changed course and the old bank is left with stories instead of traffic. Back in the gold rush era, Shasta was a trading heartbeat for the North. People came through with goods, tools, hope, and the stubborn kind of optimism that only exists when a frontier still looks like a blank check. Picture the wagons, the dust, the arguments over prices, the relief of finding supplies after a long stretch of wilderness. The town was not famous for glamour. It was famous for usefulness. In places like this, usefulness is a form of power. If you controlled the stop, you controlled the flow of survival. Then the map of opportunity was redrawn. When the railroad favored Reading, commerce followed the tracks like water finding the lowest point. Merchants moved, jobs thinned, and the everyday reasons to stay began to disappear one by one. It was not a single dramatic collapse. It was a slow realization that the future was happening somewhere else. The domino effect was personal. A business closing is not just a sign going dark. It is a family packing up, a school losing students, a church hearing fewer voices on Sunday. Old Shasta is a transit station that got rerouted. It did not fail. It simply got outpaced by a new line of progress. That is why it works so well as the first stop on this countdown. It invites empathy. It reminds us that abandonment is sometimes less about disaster and more about timing. Today, the remaining buildings feel like postcards addressed to anyone who ever wondered what it costs to be left off the main road. And if this quiet detour already feels a little cold, the next town will show how an entire silver dream can turn into a curated memory, equal parts charming and unsettling. Number 9. Calico. Calico sits in the Mojave, like a friendly ghost that still knows how to host a party. You arrive expecting a ruin, and instead you get a town that feels half museum, half small-time theater, with just enough dust in the air to remind you this is not a theme park built from scratch. The boardwalks creak, the storefronts pose for photos, and the sunlight makes the hills look like they are still guarding something valuable. For viewers who love the idea of peaceful, far-out places where the noise of modern America cannot reach you, Calico offers a rare comfort. It lets you enjoy the romance of distance without immediately testing your survival skills. You can breathe here, laugh a little, and still feel the tug of history under your boots. That history starts in 1881, when Calico rose as a silver mining town. For a brief electric stretch of time, the desert became a magnet for people chasing a better life with calloused hands and stubborn hope. The Silver Rush turned this patch of rock into a working community with stores, saloons, and the practical kind of ambition that keeps frontier towns alive. Calico was not about glamour, it was about momentum. The fun image to carry is the steady traffic of wagons and supplies, and the idea that even a harsh landscape can feel welcoming when the paychecks are real and the future looks wide open. Then the boom-bust logic arrived right on schedule. As the richest silver veins thinned and the economics of mining changed, jobs slipped away. Families who had built routines around the mine faced the quiet heartbreak of watching opportunity move elsewhere. Businesses closed, neighbors left, and the town that once felt like a promise began to shrink into silence. It was not one dramatic day, it was a slow series of goodbyes. Later, restoration brought Calico back as a public attraction. In a way, it is a Western film replayed with the original desert as its set. That is the charm and the warning. Calico shows that abandonment does not always end in total darkness, but it also hints that the next place on our list will feel less rehearsed, where nature becomes the director and the shoreline itself tells the story. Number 8. Bombay Beach. Bombay Beach sits beside the Salton Sea. It feels like a quiet secret. The horizon is wide, the air is dry, the silence is real. This is not a classic beach town. It is a place where beauty and damage live together. You can feel both in the same glance. In 2020, the population was 231. That number is small for a town with such a big past. The mood feels post-apocalyptic at first. Then you notice the art. You see murals. You see strange sculptures. You see people who did not come here to quit life. They came to reshape it. They turned leftovers into meaning. That kind of creativity only grows in places that refuse to be normal. Long ago, Bombay Beach was a resort dream. Families came for weekends. The lake looked like an inland miracle. The desert felt tamed. The town sold the idea of easy escape. Here is the detail that still grabs people. Bombay Beach sits about 223 feet below sea level. It is the lowest community in the United States. That fact sounds like a story hook. It also explains the town's odd magnetism. The place always felt different, and for a while, different was enough. Then the Salton Sea began to decline. From the 1980s onward, the ecology worsened. Salinity rose. Fish and bird life suffered. The smell and the headlines followed. Tourism fell hard. When visitors stopped coming, the local economy cracked. Small businesses lost their purpose. Property values sank. Families faced a slow, painful choice. Stay with shrinking options, or leave before the place fades further. Many chose to go. That is why Bombay Beach feels like a beach of misplaced memory. It is a paradise that was never built to last. The shoreline today looks rusted and surreal. Yet the town is not only a warning, it is also a quiet experiment. Some residents are building a second meaning here. They are turning decay into identity. You might feel uneasy, you might feel fascinated, and you might respect the courage it takes to live in a place that the modern world forgets. If this lakeside afterlife already feels strange, the next town will feel even sharper. A neon sign in the desert will ask the hardest question: who really abandoned whom? Number 7. Amboy. Amboy is a tiny pause on Route 66. It sits in the Mojave with a kind of stubborn calm. The desert is wide, the sky feels oversized, the road looks like it was drawn with a ruler. You do not arrive here by accident. You arrive because you are curious about the America that does not rush. Wikipedia notes that by 2024, the permanent population may have fallen to zero, with only very limited business activity left. That idea alone gives the place a strange hush. It is not loud abandonment. It is quiet fading. You stand near Roy's and it feels like looking at a classic American symbol that is still trying to breathe. The neon, the silhouette, the old promise of cold drinks, and a safe stop in the heat. It is nostalgia with sand in it. Amboy once had a simpler job. It was a small but essential service town. It grew with the rhythm of Route 60X. Roy's became a roadside icon because it was useful and iconic at the same time. This was a fuel stop in the middle of nowhere that felt like a lifeline. The fun image is easy to hear in your head. A long line of cars, a dusty family vacation, a tired trucker, the relief of a sign that says you're not alone out here. In towns like Amboy, the economy was not complicated. The road brought people. People kept the lights on. Then the traffic pattern changed. In 1973, Interstate 40 was completed and the flow of vehicles shifted away. The new highway was faster. It was cleaner. It was the future. Amboy lost its main source of oxygen. When the cars stopped arriving, jobs thinned fast, services closed, The small routines that make a town feel alive began to break. A diner without. Customers cannot survive on charm. A gas station without drivers becomes a relic. Families who depended on the road had to make practical decisions. Many left. The desert does not judge that choice. The desert just keeps stretching. Amboy is like a heart station of long-distance America that got bypassed when the body chose a new artery. It did not fail from weakness. It was simply skipped by progress. That is what makes it quietly heartbreaking and oddly peaceful. There is no chaos here. There is only space, the kind of space that lets you hear your own thoughts. Amboy still works as a photo stop. It is still a place to touch a living postcard of Route 66, but the next town will feel even lonelier. It will feel like driving into a desert story that no longer has a narrator. Number 6. Ballarat. Ballarat does not greet you with a ticket booth or a polished story. It greets you with silence and sun. This is a desert ghost town that never fully learned how to perform for visitors. That is exactly why it feels honest. You can stand there and hear your own breathing. You can feel the distance from the modern world, the kind of distance that older Americans sometimes daydream about when city life starts to feel too loud, too fast, too expensive. Ballarat is not a postcard town. It is a place that asks you to slow down and notice what remains when the noise leaves. The town began in 1897 as a supply point for mines in the Panamint area. It was not built on flashy dreams. It was built on practical survival. People needed water, tools, food, and a place to rest before pushing deeper into hard country. The fun detail is that in a desert economy, a reliable water source can be worth more than a lucky strike. Ballarat was that kind of lifeline. It was a small hub that mattered because it helped other places stay alive. Then the mines around it weakened. The flow of workers thinned. The wagons and trucks stopped coming as often. The money stopped circulating. Ballarat did not collapse with a bang. It faded with a shrug. When a town exists to support something else, it becomes fragile the moment that something else slows down. Storefronts lose customers. Homes lose neighbors. A community becomes a memory one, quiet departure at a time. That is why Ballarat feels like a logistics station that had its legs pulled out from under it. The structure did not fall fast. The light just dimmed slowly, like an old oil lamp running out of fuel. You can still sense the people who once counted on this place. You can imagine the tired faces and the practical conversations, the type of talk that happens when life is hard but simple. Ballarat carries a strange calm because it was never pretending to be anything more than useful. If you are the kind of viewer who loves peaceful, remote places with a truth you cannot fake, Ballarat hits that nerve. It is quiet without being cute. It is lonely without being cruel. And it prepares you for the next stop. Because if Ballarat already feels empty, the next place will feel empty in a more ironic way. It sits closer to big city energy, yet time has locked it inside a marsh of its own history. Number 5. Drawbridge. Drawbridge is one of the strangest quiet places in the Bay Area. It is a ghost town hiding in plain sight. It sits inside the Don Edwards National Wildlife Refuge. It is not open to the public. That fact alone gives it a soft, forbidden feeling. You can be close to one of the busiest regions in America and still feel like you are staring at a secret the modern world agreed to forget. The air here belongs to birds and water. The ground feels borrowed. The silence does not feel abandoned by accident. It feels reclaimed on purpose. Long ago, Drawbridge grew around the railroad and life at the edge of the marsh. It was a small working community shaped by tides, tracks, and the daily logic of getting by. You can imagine modest homes, practical routines, and neighbors who knew that isolation could be peaceful if everyone pulled their weight. This was not the kind of town that chased headlines. It was the kind that stayed useful. It offered a way to live between the city and the wild with just enough connection to feel safe. Then the world shifted. Access was always tricky, and over time the region's infrastructure and priorities moved on. When a place is hard to reach, it survives only as long as people truly need it. As that need faded, the town began to thin out. families left in quiet steps, services stopped making sense. The last resident reportedly left in 1979. What remained was not a dramatic ruin. It was a slow retreat, like a shoreline giving ground without a fight. That is why Drawbridge feels like a house built exactly where nature wanted to return. The history here does not end with a bang. It sinks, it softens. It is absorbed by reeds, salt air, and the patient rhythm of water. For viewers who dream about peaceful remote living, this town offers a gentle warning. Even the most beautiful quiet can be temporary if the path to everyday life disappears. It also offers something rare, a glimpse of how the American landscape can take a town back without anger, without noise, and without apology. And if this disappearance feels as calm as a tide sliding out, the next place will feel different. The next town will be a harder kind of survival story. It will sit up in the high country. It will carry the memory of mining that once fed a much bigger world far away. Number 4. Cerro Gordo. Cerro Gordo sits high in the Inyo Mountains, far from the easy comforts of modern life. The road up already feels like a filter. You do not stumble into this place, you choose it. The wind is sharp, the views are huge, the silence feels earned. In the online age, Cerro Gordo has found a strange second life. It is the Old West meeting the internet, a remote mining town becoming a story people follow in real time. That mix is part of the charm. It is also part of the tension. You are looking at a place that once ran on sweat and ore and now survives on memory, restoration, and curiosity. At its peak, Cerro Gordo was one of the most important silver and lead producers in the region. The population is often reported at around 4,700 in its boom era. You can imagine what that meant up here. A crowded frontier outpost on a harsh ridge, money moving fast, rules bending to the rhythm of the mines. The town carried a rough reputation, the kind common to isolated boom communities. People came for work and stayed for the hope of a bigger life. Even the most disciplined worker could feel the pull of risk and reward in thin mountain air. Then the cycle turned. Metal prices shifted, operations became harder to justify. The infrastructure of a high-altitude mining town did not age gently. Each downturn pulled a thread. Families left, businesses closed. The community did not disappear overnight. It retreated in waves. A little quieter each season, a little emptier each winter, Cerro Gordo became a fortress with fewer defenders. In 2020, the American hotel burned. That could have been the final punctuation mark. Instead, it became a new chapter. The restoration effort turned loss into momentum. People watched and donated. They argued over details. They cared. That is rare for a ghost town. And it says something important. Cerro Gordo is not being patched to live exactly as it did before. It is being patched so the story stays visible, like a historic scar that refuses to be covered. This makes Cerro Gordo a perfect turning point in our countdown. It is remote and beautiful. It is also a reminder that survival in places like this is never free. It demands money, labor, and faith. And if this hard-earned rebirth already feels dramatic, the next town will feel colder. It will be time, frozen on purpose. A place where California almost turned decay into a philosophy. Number 3. Bodie is the kind of place that makes you lower your voice without thinking. The road climbs into high country, the air gets thinner, the modern world fades behind you. When you step inside Bodie State Historic Park, you do not feel like you are visiting a set. You feel like you are interrupting a pause. This town is preserved in what the state calls arrested decay. That choice changes everything. Tables still look ready for a meal. Bottles still sit where hands left them. Store shelves feel like they might open tomorrow. It is peaceful, but not cozy. It is calm, but not safe in the way a living town is safe. The quiet here has edges. Bodie once had more than quiet. It had confidence. During the boom years around 1879 to 1881, the town may have held 8,000 to 10,000 people. The 1880 census recorded 8,000. That is a big human footprint for a place that now feels like a whisper on the wind. Bodie was a mining city large enough to believe it would last. It had businesses, schools, and the everyday machinery of hope. People did not just chase gold here. They built routines, they fell in love, they argued over money, they planned futures that made sense in the moment. The fun truth is that Bodie was not a tiny camp. It was a real town that thought it had outgrown the risk of being temporary. Then the boom-bust cycle returned to collect its debt. Mining slowed, costs rose, jobs thinned, services followed the people out. Bodie did not fall in a single dramatic scene. It faded as the math of survival changed. When the work left, the reasons to stay became sentimental instead of practical. The town slipped off the living map and into history. That is why Bodie feels like a clock whose hands are stuck at the exact second people believed gold could defeat time. You can admire the grit that built this place. You can also feel the warning under the beauty. A community can be strong and still be fragile. A dream can be honest and still expire. Bodie remains easy to find. It has signs. It has a name that echoes in American memory. But the next town will push us closer to the harsher edges of the desert. It will feel less curated. It will feel like nature and economics signed the same sentence. Number 2, Panamint City. Panamint City feels like a town suspended between rock and legend. It sits in the Panamint Range near Death Valley. Getting there is not a casual stop. You earn it with hiking and patience. The trail and the silence do most of the talking. The air is dry. The light is sharp. The ground looks like it has been waiting longer than any human plan. When people imagine peaceful, remote America, they often picture trees and lakes. Panamint City offers a different kind of peace. It is a high desert hush. It is beautiful, but it is also cold in spirit. You feel small here in a way that is oddly comforting. In the early 1870s, that comfort did not exist. This place was a silver dream with a fast heartbeat. The National Park Service notes that by 1874, Panamint City reached about 2,000 residents. That is a big boom for a mountainside town. People arrived with tools, hunger, and confidence. The mood was intense. The stakes were high. The idea was simple. Work hard now. Cash in before the window closes. The town grew the way boom towns grow. It built itself around urgency. Even if we keep the language gentle, the picture is clear. Life moved fast. Money talked loud. The future felt guaranteed, at least for a season. Then reality arrived with a short fuse. The boom ended quickly. The Park Service also records a flash flood in 1876 that destroyed much of the town. That kind of event does more than break buildings. It breaks belief. Imagine thinking you finally beat the wilderness, then watching the wilderness rewrite the rules overnight. That shock would have traveled through every family decision, every shop owner, every worker who had just started to believe in a stable life. When the physical heart of a town is ripped out, people do not debate long. They leave while they still can. So, Panamint City stands as a classic gold rush tragedy. It is a silver dream that got iced by nature at its proudest moment. Today, the ruins feel like a quiet warning carved into the slope. The town is not gone because people stopped loving the idea of it. It is gone because survival here demanded more than hope. Panamint City asks modern visitors to respect the distance, the danger, and the cost of ambition in hard country. And if this story of wood streets and a sudden flood feels like old history, number 1 will hit closer to the present. It will not be a small mining camp. It will be an industrial town left behind, like a huge set after the crew packed up and drove away. Number 1, Eagle Mountain. Eagle Mountain is the biggest kind of ghost in this story. It sits in Riverside County near the edge of Joshua Tree country. The streets and blocks were planned for real life, not for legend. That is why the place feels unsettling in a quiet way. It looks like a modern town that had the power pulled out in one clean motion. You can almost picture kids walking home, a church parking lot filling on Sunday, and the grocery lights humming at dusk. Then you remember, there are no headlights coming. This town was born in 1948 as a company town built by Henry J. Kaiser to serve an iron mine. At its height, roughly 4,000 people lived here. There were schools, a church, and the simple comforts that make a hard, desert life feel possible. Eagle Mountain was not trying to become a romantic outpost. It was trying to become stable. The mine whistle was the heartbeat. The paychecks were the weather. When the ore was strong, the town felt safe enough to believe in long futures. The trouble started when bigger forces began to squeeze the business. By the 1970s, competition and rising concerns about the cost and impact of mining helped push production downward. A plan to wind down operations followed. In the early 1980s, services began to stop. The effect on families was immediate. When a town is designed around one employer, the loss is not abstract. It is a moving truck in the driveway. It is a school with fewer desks. It is a main street that starts to echo. Eagle Mountain tried to breathe again. A correctional facility later operated here and brought a short, practical pulse back to the area. But that chapter ended in 2003 after a serious incident and the closure of the facility. After that, the silence became permanent. Eagle Mountain feels like a city programmed to live by the shift whistle. When that sound ends, everything goes quiet at once. The modern ruins have also reached pop culture. Parts of the film Tenet use this abandoned landscape, turning real emptiness into cinematic tension. It is a fitting detail for our number one, because this is the scary comfort of the story. If a whole industrial town can vanish when the economic current turns, what other small places across America are standing closer to that edge than anyone wants to admit? America is not only bright skylines and 24-hour highways, it is also the quiet gaps on the map where real communities once fought to live, work, and belong. These towns remind us that isolation can feel like freedom when you want slower days and wider skies. But isolation can also become a golden cage when jobs fade, clinics close, and the nearest helping hand is hours away. That tension is what makes these places so haunting and so beautiful at the same time. They are not just ruins, they are lessons written in dust, salt air, and old timber. So here is the question. If you had to choose one place from this list to live for a full year, which one would you risk? Are you the kind of person who dreams of a silent desert morning, or the kind who needs Wi-Fi, a hospital, and a store that is still open after 8 at night? Tell me in the comments.